It was Master Plo Koon who found me and brought me to the temple where I belonged.
You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan. But you might make it as mine.
More than you realize, I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
I know.
What do you want with Anakin Skywalker?
He is the key to everything. Ahsoka.
Anakin.
Welcome back to part 2 of the complete life of Ahsoka Tano. In part 1 we saw how she was nearly kidnapped by youngling hunters before she would make it into the Jedi Order, how and why she was paired with the greatest and most reckless of Jedi generals, and how the Clone Wars raised her to be creative and independent. We also see the first signs of doubt as Ahsoka is exposed to different points of views and realizes that the war and the people involved could not be seen as simply good or evil. And the remainder of the Clone Wars would only make her views on the Jedi's role in the galaxy even more complicated. While there was a growing call for peace in the Republic Senate and Separatist Parliament, Dooku orchestrated an attack on the heart of Coruscant. The blast would go off during the vote to open up peace talks, but with the capital plunged in darkness, the senators were more bloodthirsty than ever. But the first mission after this incident would not be a major Clone Wars battle. It may not even take place in this universe. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka were sent to investigate a Jedi distress code that was over 2,000 years old, and which was coming from outside the galaxy. Things get very weird very quickly.
But there's nothing here. Rex is at the exact same coordinates, and he's not here.
And then they notice an enormous double pyramid structure that pulls the shuttle into its blinding light. When the Jedi awaken, they're on a lush world, but Kenobi notes that none of the equipment's giving them a location in known space. In fact, they might not even be in the same plane of existence. When they get out of the shuttle, Ahsoka spots a reflection on a distant hill, but no one else sees it. Anakin begins to hear voices that are in his mind only. An angelic being known as the Daughter emerges. All can see her, and she immediately starts asking if Anakin is the one. Without introduction or explanation, she says she needs to take Anakin to him.
I will take you to him. Him who?
Utterly lost and confused, they have no other option than to follow her. As they travel, they notice that the season changes throughout the day, that there are no animals, and the Force is incredibly strong and unique here. As they travel a tight mountain pass, the Daughter's brother, known as the Sun, causes an avalanche that separates Anakin from them. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are forced to return to their crash site, but the ship's no longer there. The sky goes dark, the plants start to die, and the sun appears. His opening question is an alarming one.
Is it true that he is the chosen one?
What do you know of such things?
Kenobi knows that no one outside the High Council should know of this prophecy, especially the fact that Anakin was believed to be the one to fulfill it. Their lightsabers were activated thinking this could only be a Sith. He laughs this off, saying in a way this was true, but not quite accurate, before transforming into a terrifying bat-like creature and flying off.
What in the universe was that?
Meanwhile, Anakin has made his way into an enormous castle structure, running up to a being seated upon a great throne. The father bombards the Chosen One with riddles, before pointing out that there is no rush. The Jedi are stuck here.
You will be my guest tonight.
Obi and Ahsoka were held up in a cave for the night, and sleep is not coming easy. Ahsoka seems troubled by something, and then Obi-Wan hears a voice that he had not heard for a long time.
Obi-Wan, have you done as I asked? Have you trained the boy?
Kenobi is skeptical that this is actually his master. It is more likely a Sith trick, and continues the conversation with his lightsaber activated. But as the spirit speaks to him, Obi-Wan can sense in the Force that it really was him. Qui-Gon Jinn asked about Skywalker, and explained that this world was a nexus in the Force, one that could prove if the slave boy he had found on Tatooine truly was the Chosen One. Back in the castle, Anakin's not sleeping well either, eventually being woken up by his mother, who pleads with him to let go of his guilt, but he's skeptical too.
What kind of black arts is this?
When the conversation turns to Padme, the being gets angered, saying that Padme was not his fate, and when Anakin challenges the being on this, his mother flashes into the form of a beast, before disappearing. Now Ahsoka would be visited.
Are you happy, child? Your master, does he treat you well?
The form of her future self would appear, but likewise she too believes it is a trick. This being is brutally honest about how Skywalker is planting the seeds of the dark side in her. Things we've seen in the Part 1 video, with how other masters are shocked to see Ahsoka use fear and torture to get answers. This future Ahsoka says that slowly, and in small ways, her master is leading her toward the dark side.
Seeds of the dark side planted by your master. Be warned. You may never see your future if you remain his student.
Skywalker would rush to the father, activate his saber, and accuse him of being a Sith Lord.
I am neither Sith nor Jedi. I am much more. And so are you.
The father explains that they are not in the same plane of existence as the rest of the galaxy, that he and his children are the most powerful Force wielders known, that ages ago he knew that they would need to remove themselves from the regular physical universe.
Therefore it was necessary to withdraw from the temporal world and live here as anchorites.
But he also believes that the galaxy he left behind was finding itself in imbalance, and having too much light or dark destroys life as we know it, and that if Anakin was the chosen one, if that old myth was true, he had to find out for himself. The next day, the son and daughter are sent to capture Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. With both in his possession, the father poses an ultimatum to Anakin. He's forced to make a choice: save his Padawan or save his beloved master, framing it as if these are the only two options, a false dichotomy that reflects the imbalance placed on the real world by the Jedi, sorting Force users as either Jedi or Sith. Anakin seems to have a moment of hesitation, until Kenobi says the planet is the Force, to use its power. Anakin realizes what Obi-Wan is saying, and that he doesn't have to deal in absolutes. He calls upon the wellspring of the Force and pulls both the daughter and the son to the ground, freeing both his Padawan and master. But he doesn't stop there. He continues to control the beings, forcing them back into their humanoid forms, making them kneel before him, powerless to deny Anakin's strength in the Force. The father declares that this test proves that Anakin is indeed the chosen one, the one to keep the balance between these two opposite yet necessary expressions of the Force. But the father then asks to be alone with Anakin.
Do not trust him.
The father says that Skywalker must take his place upon the throne of balance, outside of space and time, to become the ruler of the Force itself, on the planet that was the wellspring of the cosmic force. But Anakin turns this down, despite the father's claims that this decision would haunt him and the rest of the galaxy. As they are attempting to leave, Anakin has a nightmare where the sun visits him and tempts him to the dark side. When he awakens, he sees the Dark One has snuck aboard the ship and leaps out of the bay door holding Ahsoka. In the beast form, the son has the Padawan in his claws, and despite the fast and expert piloting by Anakin, the monster escapes and the shuttle makes a hard crash landing. Kenobi says that they should hold off rescuing Ahsoka and seek out the father, but Anakin refuses and walks toward the tower. When Ahsoka awakens, she's in a prison cell and is visited by an odd little creature, which doubts that her master will ever come for her.
He will come for me.
And if he does not?
He will!
After he frees her, the odd creature bites into her arm, and the Padawan falls to the ground, seeming to wither and become visibly darker. She's being consumed by the dark side of the Force, the process completed with her eyes turning yellow. Back with the father, Kenobi would be granted the Blade of Mortis, a weapon that would be able to control the sun. But in the courtyard of the Dark Spire, Ahsoka confronts her master.
Are you proud of me, Master? Always with the criticism, Master. Never really believing in me.
The dark side is flowing through her, playing on her insecurities and turning her frustrations with Anakin into pure hatred. She will not allow her master to talk her out of it, saying that the son has a plan for them both.
If you don't join him, he will kill me.
I won't let him.
Then you will be forced to kill me.
This would erupt into full combat, with Skywalker trying to disarm her while Ahsoka's giving it everything she had. Her dual blades furiously slicing at her master.
And now, the student will kill the master.
Getting ahead of yourself, aren't you, Snips?
Don't call me that! I hate it when you call me that!
Skywalker's able to hold her off, and when Kenobi arrived, the Padawan was more easily held at bay. Meanwhile, inside the Dark Spire, the fight between the son and daughter would mirror the struggle between the Jedi. But as Obi-Wan threw the Mortis blade to Anakin, Ahsoka intercepts it and delivers it to her new master. Once the son had the only weapon that could kill the father, he turns to his dark disciple and coldly presses his fingers against Ahsoka's forehead, ending her life. The Padawan falls dead to the floor, her lightsaber is rolling out of her limp hands. As the son goes to kill the father, the daughter rushes in between them and takes the strike. Mortally wounded, she falls to the floor beside Ahsoka. Both the son and father are devastated by her loss, but the father, who symbolized the balance of force, also knows this will have grave consequences for the galaxy at large.
All is lost. The balance has been broken.
Anakin is focused on Ahsoka, frantically trying to find a way to save his Padawan, but the father says there is nothing he can do.
There is no hope.
Yes, there is. There's always hope.
Just then the daughter signals to the father that she wishes the last of her life to be breathed into Ahsoka. The father has Anakin raise one hand over the daughter and one over Ahsoka, and channels through the Chosen One the last of the daughter's life force into Ahsoka. With this force infusion from the being that was the very embodiment of the light side of the Force, Ahsoka would rise.
Hey, Snips.
The father commands them to leave, warning that the son will now seek to use their ship to re-enter the physical plane and plunge the galaxy into darkness. But the ship was still in rough shape after the crash landing. Ahsoka assesses everything that needs to be repaired.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
There's a long list of repairs, but with the spare parts on board and some creative shortcuts, she could be able to fix it. The Padawan being tasked with this really highlights Ahsoka's incredible mastery of various ship mechanics, and is just the latest instance in which the higher-ranking and older Jedi defer to her expertise. As the ship was being repaired, Qui-Gon reappears, but this time to Anakin, telling him to go to a point strong in the dark side of the Force. Descending into a cavern surrounded by pools of lava, the sun shows him the possible futures if Skywalker is to continue down his current path, that the Chosen One must embrace the darkness if he is to bring about peace. When Kenobi arrives, the sun attacks, and with all that he's seen in this vision, Anakin tells his master that he knows what must be done to end the Clone Wars.
I have seen that it is the Jedi who will stand in the way of peace.
Having sent his master's speeder into the lava, he abandons Obi-Wan and races back to the shuttle with hopes of leading the sun into the galaxy. The Chosen One and the sun, this font of dark side energy, would destroy the Jedi Order and end the Clone Wars.
You have to disable the ship.
But I just finished putting it back together.
Luckily, the Padawan was able to remove a crucial part just before her master returned. And as the son goes to the daughter's tomb to remove the Blade of Mortis, the father speaks with Anakin and learns that the future's been revealed to him, but this cannot be allowed.
If there is to be balance, what you have seen must be forgotten.
A touch to the forehead, and Anakin is stripped of the visions of the future. Once Anakin comes to, the father explains that his son broke a fundamental law of the Force.
My son broke the laws of time and showed you what you should never have seen.
Just then, Ahsoka would come flying in with Kenobi, and together they would face off against the son. While the son begins to think the plan is to kill him, the father would pull the dagger into his hand and take his own life. The son was devastated and is told that their powers are tied together. With his strength fading, Anakin is able to kill the son, ending this entire saga in a way that gave the father comfort in his final moments, knowing that Anakin was indeed the Chosen One.
The Chosen One, you have brought balance. Stay on this path, and you will do it again.
As the monastery complex comes crashing down, a blinding wave of light envelops the Jedi. Ahsoka, Obi, and Anakin wake up to the voice of Rex hailing them on their comms.
We were worried. You were off the scopes there for a moment.
To those in the regular plane of existence, the Jedi's absence was only for a few minutes. But this event would remain as one of the most confusing and important events of their lives, even when it seemed that Anakin was lost to the dark side. As he has said when bringing Ahsoka back to life, there's always hope. No matter how far it seemed her master had fallen, she too was certain that he was the Chosen One, the one destined to bring balance to the Force. But from this metaphysical adventure in the cosmic force itself, the trio would be back on the warfront. Master Even Peel was captured and taken to the Citadel, the most impenetrable facility in the entire galaxy, a prison created by Jedi centuries ago to hold rogue Jedi. The mission was considered incredibly dangerous and was only being undertaken because the information Peel possessed could lead the CIS to take control of vital hyperspace lanes. Lanes that would act like a superhighway straight to Coruscant and could bring a swift victory for the CIS.
I'm sorry I'm late. I just heard about the briefing. We're going to rescue Master Peel, right?
You two have much to discuss.
Despite the mission's great importance, Anakin has to break the news that Ahsoka will not be coming. She has certainly proven herself, but to Skywalker this was far too risky, a decision that may be influenced by Anakin having just watched Ahsoka die on Mortis. He knew he was lucky to still have her, and he knew he couldn't go through that again.
How am I supposed to learn if you won't let me share the risk?
This isn't a mission for learning. You either do or die. And that's not a risk I'm willing to share.
Frustrated, Ahsoka turns to Plo Koon.
What is it, little Ahsoka?
She reveals that Anakin is being too controlling.
I think he's being overly protective. He's picking and choosing which assignments I can be a part of.
And though Plo tells her that she needs to respect her master's judgment, he finds a way to help little Ahsoka. The plan would be to have the crew frozen in carbonite, and R2 would command a group of reprogrammed B-1 droids to pilot a CIS shuttle. With the scan showing no life forms on board, they would be able to make it onto the surface of Lola Sayu. Once the droids melted everyone out of their carbonite shells, Anakin sees that Ahsoka had disobeyed his orders.
Discussed it with Master Plo. If there's one thing I've learned from you, Master, it's that following direct orders isn't always the best way to solve a problem.
As they near the main tower of the Citadel, they notice that the security measures will force them to free climb the rock wall. The climb would be perilous, but when they finally make it, they see the doors ray shielded, something that was not expected in the original plans. Ahsoka notices that there's a ventilation shaft above the door, and though not considered in the original planning, which she was not a part of, she could fit through it. All seemed clear until Clone Trooper Charger lost his footing and fell into a defense mine, alerting the entire base. Droid guards were scrambled, while the hallways were lined with automated laser turrets and a sweeping pulse of electricity. But as Even Peel was about to lose his one good eye to a torture droid, Republic forces come blasting in, freeing the Master and making their way to Captain Tarkin. Sprinting through the hallways, they would be intercepted by customized commando droids, one of which was able to tackle Ahsoka to the ground and start strangling her before she's able to slice its head off. Watching the Republic tear through his droid forces, the Warden, Osi Sobek, activates an electromagnet. The magnet rips everyone's weapons out of their hands and pulls Anakin's arm, along with the rest of him, up to the ceiling. Luckily, Anakin was able to activate his blade, destroying the magnet and allowing Republic forces to press through the commandos and free Tarkin. The captain debates with General Kenobi, but the Jedi dismiss his protests and agree to split up the forces to escape the Citadel.
A stronger force would have a better chance of protecting the information.
Not in this situation.
Skywalker would cut through a wall and out into the old fortress tunnels created back when the Jedi once ruled this facility. Ahsoka scouts out ahead and reports all is clear, while Tarkin then argues with Anakin and later even tries to get Rex to agree that this was madness to follow the orders of a Padawan.
I am concerned that the Jedi have elected this child to lead the group.
I've said with her many times, and I trust her, Captain.
Kenobi and Peel's group would end up being captured, but Ahsoka's improvising helped to take out the shield-wielding commandos while still having enough explosives to blow a hole in the tunnel wall. She would then lead the way through a fuel pipeline, but reports that R2 and the shuttle are not at the extraction point. The Warden detected the second team as well, and more droid forces swarmed them, but Skywalker is able to clear the clankers this time. R2 would also have to improvise, getting the B-1s to act as if they're escorting Republic prisoners, guiding Kenobi's group to the intended extraction point on a landing pad. It almost worked without a hitch, but the tactical droid was able to inform his units that these B-1s were reprogrammed imposters. An intense firefight breaks out on the landing pad, with speeder bikes hijacked midair, turbo laser cannons blasting away, and the commando droids showing why they were one of the most intelligent droid variants in the CIS, turning the guns on the shuttle and taking out Echo along with it. With no other option, Kenobi and Skywalker make the call to the temple, saying they had to scrap the plan and needed immediate backup. Plo Koon replies that they will send a fleet immediately. As they progress through the cavernous terrain, Ahsoka is surprised to hear Anakin sympathize with Tarkin's critiques of the Jedi, especially on their shortcoming when it comes to running a war.
Captain Tarkin feels the Jedi should be relieved from the burden of leading the war effort.
That's ridiculous.
But we aren't soldiers. We're peacekeepers. The Jedi Code often prevents us from going far enough to achieve victory.
Rex would now lead the way through the winding cave systems, being pursued by even more droids, along with vicious Anuba, desperately trying to keep moving in order to make it to the extraction point in time, as the waves of both organic and robotic foes keep increasing. Eventually, an Anuba is able to mortally wound Even Peel. Ahsoka rushes over and he tells her to be calm, that he will not make it out, and that she must pass on the location of the secret hyperspace lanes directly to the Jedi Order.
Whether you were meant to be on this mission or not, you are now the most important part of it.
She would bring his body to the rest of the team, and Tarkin is shocked that the girl would be the one to now have this vital information. After a quick ceremony for the fallen master, they arrive at the extraction point. In orbit, one of the largest battles of the Clone Wars erupts, with multiple Venators and CIS capital ships engaging each other, as starfighters and transports try to make their way through clouds of hyenas and vulture droids. Back on the surface, the Warden would personally try to prevent the escape, but is shot down and finished off by Ahsoka before he's able to chuck Tarkin into bubbling pools of lava.
My thanks, Padawan Tano. I see you've trained her well.
Plo Koon would be commanding the fleet, while Saesee Tiin would prove an excellent starfighter escort, leading them through the carnage and back to the capital ships. Tucking away into the Venator's hangar, Plo gives the all clear, and they make the jump back to Coruscant. They mourn the loss of Even Peel, but know this information could help bring about a quicker end to the war. Though Ahsoka and Tarkin have different ideas as to who this info belongs to.
I was instructed by Chancellor Palpatine to bring the intel directly to him for debriefing.
I promised Master Peel that I would deliver it only to the Council.
And Anakin has one more burning question about this whole operation.
did you assign Ahsoka to the mission?
It appears I did.
And walks off with little Ahsoka. The next battle would be on Felucia. It is unclear if the CIS invasion was the result of them discovering that the Jedi helped the Niceland farmers fight off Hondo's pirate gang, or if the Separatists merely invaded this world on their own initiative. But much like on Meriden, they had set up at least one prefabricated base, which held a sizable army of various droid units. Ahsoka and Skywalker lead the charge, deflecting bolts while the ATTE walkers and clone troopers filed through the thick Felucian jungles. Once in position, Plo Koon would set their plan in motion. Native Felucians would act as guides, allowing Skywalker to find the best place to hide his troops. Plo would stay with the tanks, and Ahsoka would lead troopers with grapple hooks.
You taught me well. I can handle anything.
Don't get cocky.
As she made her way through the fluorescent jungle, Ahsoka sensed something was watching them. But it wasn't a droid, and she assumed it must be an animal, with this world hosting countless life forms. Once she comes back that they're in position, Plo orders the ATTEs to open fire. When the door to the base opens, dwarf spider droids file out, and are ambushed by Anakin's forces, slicing through them while the 501st blasted them. The door remained open and allowed their team to pass through. With the droids now worried about Skywalker's troops running in through the front door, Plo and the wolf pack come flying in on jetpacks, while Ahsoka protects the grapple hook troopers as they make their ascent. The plan was executed perfectly and went off without a hitch. That is except for one major loss.
I can't believe my luck. A Jedi youngling.
The presence Ahsoka had picked up on was a Trandoshan, who was on Felucia to bring in some exotic and dangerous animals for a big hunt. He ended up in the middle of battle, but walked away with one of the most deadly creatures in the galaxy. A catch that should make for a thrilling event for sport hunters.
Ahsoka, can you hear me? Ahsoka!
You won't be needing this.
Bosca was the forest moon to Trandosha, and had several islands that these hunters would stock with different types of game. Island 4 seems to have been reserved for the most dangerous game, sapient life forms. To set the tone, the prisoners are dropped from their cages and onto the beach, where they're hunted by rapid-fire blaster cannon. Several are killed within these first moments, but Ahsoka is able to make it into the thicket. Still in utter shock and confusion, she's set upon by three beings.
We used to be Jedi younglings.
Khalifa the Human, Jinx the Twi'lek, and Omir the Syrian. Each seemed to be about her age, if not older, but tell her that they were kidnapped as Jedi younglings.
We were taken by those foul lizards for their amusement. Be hunted, killed, and mounted on their wall as trophies.
Back on Felucia, we see that the Republic forces have been tirelessly searching throughout the night and into the next morning. Skywalker's short with Rex, telling the trooper that he doesn't care how many times they have to search the same area. They will not leave until they find her. Plo's bond with the Padawan is great as well, but he's able to stay calm and trust in the Force, along with their intelligence networks.
We have alerted our forces throughout the Outer Rim, and intelligence assets inside the Confederacy. If she's spotted, we shall know about it.
But still, Anakin will not yield, forcing Plo to directly call him out for not having control over his emotions, and has to order Skywalker and his men to leave. In the Hunter's Lodge, we see the heads of numerous creatures of all sizes, shapes, and intelligences. The Jedi were weaving through the enormous vine-like forest, and they set eyes on the other two survivors that came in with Ahsoka.
We should help them.
No.
But Khalifa's experience told her that the lizards were already zeroing in on these two. Blaster fire erupts, and eventually they're both killed, with the younglings trying to convince Ahsoka that this was how it works here. There was no room for heroics, and no way to defeat the Hunters. They can only stick together and try to survive for as long as possible. Ahsoka was not having it, saying that her master would be ashamed of her, and that with the Force as her weapon, she could find a way off this hellish world. Heading out into the thicket, she decided to taunt the Trandoshans.
Here, lizard, come and find me.
With a split second to spare, she senses the eyes on her. Force pulls the rifle aside and slams the hunter down. But when she tried to take him down, the species' great size and strength proves too much for her. She's thrown off, and he's able to grab his rifle, raising it up, only to be force choked by Khalifa.
Don't kill him out of hatred.
This good deed did not go unpunished, the hunter calling out to his brethren, forcing the Padawans to flee. Once they felt they were safe, Khalifa revealed how Ahsoka's bravery inspired them.
Your energy, your strength, it's what we've been lacking, and forgot who we are. We are Jedi.
They planned to take one of their hunting platforms and search for the lodge. The next morning, they learned why it was so hard to find this base. It was no permanent structure, but a massive floating platform. Worse, the speeders had noticed them and flew down to open fire with their miniguns. As a rite of passage, the young Dar would try to go kill Khalifa with his bare hands.
You have the honor of being my first Jedi kill.
Before he can fire, Ahsoka swoops down and confronts him. The fight is tough, with Dar still keeping up for a while, but when he rushes the Padawan, she uses his greater mass against him and sends him flying over her, impaling himself on meter-long thorns below. Khalifa was battered, but happy to be back fighting like a Jedi should. But this moment would not last, as a red bolt came screaming through the jungle and mortally wounded Khalifa. Ahsoka would hold her and duck behind the thicket, while the Trandoshan was going mad.
Those Jedi whelps killed my son.
Though she would not make it off-world, Khalifa's able to embrace her fate with the peace of a true Jedi.
I'll take care of the others. I know you will.
As she dies with a smile on her face. Back at the temple on Coruscant, Plo Koon sees that Anakin has not stopped searching through each and every report from the GAR and their spies within the CIS, trying to find any clue as to where his Padawan may have been taken. But Plo's trying to get Anakin to see the lesson in this.
This may not be within your power.
Whatever you're trying to say, Master Plo, just say it.
If you have trained her well, she shall take care of herself.
After nightfall on Waska, Ahsoka's able to meet up with Omel and Jinx, and once they learn that Khalifa's dead, they no longer want to fight. But Ahsoka tries to rally them.
If it's only a matter of time till we die, I say we go down with a fight.
When the next shipment comes to the beach, they call on the Force and are able to launch themselves onto the ship. The co-pilot comes out to eliminate these rowdy prey, but gets more than he bargained for. Battered by Omel and Jinx while Ahsoka rushes to the pilot. A scattergun nearly cuts her in two, but always nimble and powerful, she's able to best the lizard. During the scuffle, the control panels are damaged, overriding many of the ship's functions, and now causing a twisting and turning of the segmented hull. Explosions erupt and the ship comes plummeting down. Luckily, Ahsoka is able to release the prisoner cages before it crashes. And out of this smoldering rubble emerges a tall, hairy being, a Wookiee who goes by the name Chewbacca. They bring him back to their base, where Ahsoka is able to translate. The two Padawan are even more frustrated than before, having lost a ship that was supposed to be their ticket off this world. But Chewie says that if they can make it back to the crash site, he could craft a transmitter. His homeworld of Kashyyyk was nearby, and these Trandoshan raids were something his people have had to put up with for centuries. Ahsoka and Chewie were able to retrieve the parts, but a hunter was waiting. Sniper rifle zeroing in on Ahsoka, only to be detected by her Jedi friends, and forced into the open, where Chewie's greater strength allows them to take the hunter prisoner. It is unclear if the transmitter was able to get off a message before shorting out, and Jinx says that they need to press their advantage and use this prisoner to try and assault the hunting lodge one more time.
Ahsoka, you got us to believe in ourselves again, and, well, I believe Jinx's plan will work.
She agrees to help them, but has to convince Chewie to come along as well. The Wookiee feeling that luck has not been on his side lately. By using a Force mind trick, they get the hunter to call the speeder to pick him up. Once the vessel sets down, they ambush the single pilot and easily make off with the craft. Flying up to the platform, the whole lodge is alerted. Some are sent off the edge, others are beaten, while Omel nearly guns a couple of them down. But their leader is able to disable the craft, sending it crashing down toward the Jedi and the Wookiee. When they look up, the hunters have them pinned. But just then, a dropship appears. The bounty hunter Sugi was hired by Wookiees who had received Chewbacca's distress call. They rush out and confront their reptilian adversaries, just the latest battle in the timeless feud between these two species. The Wookiees would blast the rest, while Ahsoka would enter the lodge to fight Garnek. The toughest among them, he nearly defeated her, but eventually he too would be overwhelmed by her expert wielding of the Force. Surrounded by the skins of those he had killed for sport, he screams that Ahsoka must pay for what she did to his son. And when he reaches for the blaster, she's forced to send him flying through the doors, where he flips over the railing and falls to his death.
All I had was your training, and the lessons you taught me. And because of you, I did survive. I was able to lead others to survive as well.
Yoda was watching and overheard everything, smiling to himself and thinking that this pairing was working. Ahsoka was turning that reckless power into an ability to inspire and lead others, and perhaps she would indeed help Skywalker overcome his fear of loss. Through Ahsoka, he would realize that there will be times where he will not be able to save his loved ones, that Skywalker would learn to trust the Force and understand that there were problems that even the Chosen One could not solve. Their next mission would take them to Mon Cala, where Skywalker was assigned as Padme's Jedi protector during the heated debates in the Council Hall. King Kalina was mysteriously assassinated, and though his son Prince Lee Char was set to take over, the Quarren think he's too young, and demand to have more of a say in the government. Riff Tamsin was a CIS ambassador, and in the ear of many powerful Quarren, hoping to use this turmoil to pull them towards secession. While Anakin and Padme would represent the Republic's interest in mediating this transition, the Jedi Council feels that Tamsin's presence here was a good sign that the CIS may be planning to initiate a civil war, and respond by dispatching a company of scuba troopers, led by Kit Fisto and Ahsoka. Akbar is tasked with organizing the Mon Calamari military and acting as a personal bodyguard to Prince Lichar. Tensions are high on Mon Calamari, as Akbar convenes with Prince Lichar. They hope for the best, but moments later, their worst fears are confirmed, and a full-blown underwater civil war erupts. Riff Tamsin would attack the capital with hundreds of Aqua droids, along with Quarren separatists. Huge sections of the capital were being destroyed, and the Quarren fighters were able to rip Anakin's helmet off. But Ahsoka was there to save her master's life. Again.
And it under control, Snips.
I knew you'd say that.
While Anakin rushes over to save the senator, he orders his Padawan to protect the prince. Riff Tamsin was about to rip him apart with his shark-like jaws, but at the last second, Ahsoka's green blade strikes at his face, and he's repelled. Hitching a ride on her submersible, they're able to make it into an express tube. They're suddenly cut off by Aqua droids, with Tamsin smashing his head into the glass. He broke through and might have devoured them if the Calamari Guard did not show up and open fire with their blaster weapons. The Republic chalked this up as a victory, but knew the Separatists would be back. Also lurking above the surface, opposite to the Jedi fleet, were several Trident-class assault ships, a Providence, and 2 C-9979 landing craft, which drop down these odd hemispheres. Once they start sinking, they start to come to life, emitting a yellow glow and extending their enormous tentacles. These are new CIS prototypes for conquering water worlds. These were cyborg creatures, jellyfish that were covered with armor plating that made it impervious to blasters and even lightsabers, while an augmented power supply gave their electrical attacks even more power. But Kit Fisto discovered a weakness by sending the devilfish to crash into the core of the Hydroid Medusa, causing a chain reaction with that power supply that would blow them apart. The Republic and Calamari troops were forced to retreat to the Coral Caves, where the young prince laments his shortcomings as a leader and thanks Ahsoka for saving him. Akbar tells him that his late father would be proud, and they will continue to fight the next day. But Anakin convinces them that they must try to make it to the surface and take refuge on the Republic ships before they're hunted down. To get up quickly, Fisto went about stealing the Quarren scout vehicles.
Ahsoka, you're up first. Take the prince and Senator Tills.
Got it.
Just as they were about to make it up, the C-70 exploded. Riff had anticipated this move and sent droids to capture it and set up charges. Scattered and without an escape, they again have to hide while the Separatists have free reign over the city. Meanwhile, on Naboo, we see that the Jedi Council is asking the Gungans, another underwater dwelling species, to mobilize their army to come to the aid of their beloved Senator Padme. While the Gungan Council says they need more time, Jar Jar rallies them to send their forces. In the underwater vegetation, the Calamari watch as the Quarren and droids move enormous groups of captured civilians, Fisto saying they will be used as slave labor to help the CIS war machine. Lichar is devastated, still thinking himself a coward, but Ahsoka has wise words for him.
You don't have to carry a sword to be powerful. Some leaders' strength is inspiring greatness in others.
Akbar tells Anakin that if they could take out the communication center, the Separatists would be blind to any incoming Republic reinforcements. While Anakin's troops try to take out some of the patrols in the capital, they're descended on by the Hydroid Medusa. But Alices took them away from the prisoners, giving Lichar the chance to give an inspiring speech to his people. Just then, the Gungans come raining in, quickly making their descent and helping to free both the prisoners and join up with Anakin to try and figure out a way to take out the cyborg jellyfish. Ahsoka's forces would be personally attacked by Riff Tamsin, who used the larger Trident class to create a massive whirlpool. The Shark General would zip through the turbulence to try and tear the prince apart, but Ahsoka was able to keep him at bay. Anakin would race over and destroy the ship, but nearly all of the Republic and Calamari forces were surrounded and captured, all but Lichar and Ahsoka, who are able to slip away through the kelp-covered cave systems. Seeming to have lost it all, the prince can't understand how Ahsoka could stay so calm and optimistic.
Aren't you scared?
I used to be. All the time. If you make decisions out of fear, you're more likely to be wrong.
In his newly captured capital, Riff is furious that his main target escaped, torturing his captives with more of these aquatic cyborg creatures. Nosir Rai was the Quarren's senator, and though he was allied with Riff, the prince knows this was only because Nosir felt this was best for his Quarren people. If Lichar could convince him that Dooku simply wanted to take the planet for himself and cast both of these native peoples aside, then these two races could reunite. Fortunately, Dooku was playing his hand a bit too aggressively. allowing Rift to move in legions of his Karkadon soldiers, making Nostr suspicious that they wanted to make this their new watery home. After sneaking into a prison camp, the Prince and Ahsoka meet up with their Senator and Captain Akbar, who's shocked to learn that Lee Char is going to rely on the Quarren traitors. And when the Aqua Droid guards detect them, the Prince demands a meeting in the throne room. Drunken off his apparent victory, Tamsin reveals how he played the foolish Quarren.
The Quarren are more gutless than your people.
Lee Char pleads with Nostr Rai, stressing how the shark turned their people against each other, depleting their ranks of soldiers so that once the calamari were defeated, the Quarren would be easily turned into slaves. Nostr can see it as true, but is still too afraid to act. To send a message to everyone, Riff orders a public execution of the prince, to be ripped apart by a trio of Karkadons.
It's all part of the plan, Master.
I was hoping you were gonna say that. Anything I can do?
Unfortunately, this time, it's out of our hands.
The Quarren leader could not watch the son of his friend killed. He shoots over while releasing a cloud of ink. In the confusion, he orders his people to fight for Lee Char. Combined Republic, Gungan, Calamari, and Quarren forces rise up and engage the countless droids and shark soldiers, the unique weaponry of each making for an incredible display of underwater carnage, while the Calamari spears, Gungan electro whips, and Tamsin's exploding knives, one of which the prince was able to remove and plunge into the shark that killed his father, turning the CIS commander into the chum he was. When the fighting came to an end, an assembly was held with these now reunited peoples, and Nostr Rai crowned Lee Char the new king, Ahsoka witnessing how powerful this one fearful young leader had become, with the help of a little Jedi wisdom, of course. The next battle would be one of the most intense of the entire Clone Wars, but Ahsoka would not play a major role. During the Battle of Umbara, she and Barriss Offee fought in the space battle that blew away the large blockade, but did not partake in the ground invasion. And though she likely wished to be a part of that campaign, the next fight would be personal. Yoda tells him that they've lost contact with the large Togruta colony on the planet Kyros, in the expansion region. Dooku personally led the invasion force comprised of hundreds of B-1 battle droids. The defenseless colony was taken instantly, and when the Republic forces came to investigate, Ahsoka notes the village was far too quiet. Zipping to the capital via their BARC speeders, they're ambushed by commando droids on flintknots. A full-out biker battle ensues, with Ahsoka standing up on the sidecar deflecting bolts away, then manning the gun to blast the clankers, and even showing off some amazing athleticism while taking out an AAT. Once they get to the capital, Kenobi's informed that the CIS commander wishes to speak with him. But when they see the hologram of Darth Stennar, Anakin loses it.
Zygerian scum!
Ahsoka's confused by this reaction, and when Skywalker steps away, Kenobi explains his hatred for the slaver.
Anakin has never talked about his past, has he?
Only to tell me he won't talk about it.
They've known each other for 2 years now, and yet Anakin has not told Ahsoka even the most general summary of his past. She didn't know her own master grew up as a slave, but she and Kenobi did know how to handle Anakin when his rage was bubbling.
Anakin has struggled to put his past behind him.
Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on him.
The Zygerian reveals to Kenobi that he's not going to surrender, but wanted to show the Jedi that he had placed bombs all over the settlement. With an inconspicuous activation of his comm, Anakin and Ahsoka heard the whole conversation, and raced through the streets on their ATRT. Seeing the large explosive device, Ahsoka is cautious in removing the panel and trying to see how to deactivate it, but Anakin has a simple solution. Hopefully a quick swing of a saber would do the trick.
How did you know that would work?
I trusted my instincts.
On to the next set of bombs. They see these are linked and must be destroyed at the same time, while B2s and sniper droidekas appear to rain down blaster fire. This was a test of their ability to work together in harmony, first needing to have the snipers look at them, and bounce the incoming bolt into the opposite droideka, and then slashing through the explosives at the same moment. Obi-Wan was stalling, but as soon as he heard that the bombs were disabled, he pulls his lightsaber back and demands a surrender. The Zygerian had a backup plan though, activating the bomb strapped to his tactical droid and hurling him at Obi-Wan before making his escape. The Jedi were in hot pursuit. With the great jumping ability of these frog walkers and a little boost from the Force, the Jedi were able to make it onto the YV-865, where we see just how Anakin's blind rage to kill the slaver actually led him here without a plan.
So, what's your plan?
I'm open to ideas.
When the loading door opened, the Jedi were greeted with a monstrous tentacle creature. As Anakin was fighting with it, Ahsoka made it to the cockpit. Lightsabers pinning the slaver, she's able to deliver the scum to her master.
Mission accomplished, Master.
Skywalker would try to get him to reveal the location of the Togruta prisoners, and when he resists, the ex-slave boy violently presses his saber to Dinar's neck. Ahsoka's taken aback by his actions. having had her own history of rough interrogations in the past. But she could feel how deep this hatred was. It does work, however, and he reveals that their queen will be hosting a great slave auction. Even after this, he insults the Jedi as being weak and near their end. Although Ahsoka enjoys her master's tough talk in support of the Order, you can see in her face that she's still disturbed by this dark side of her master. With the report to the council, they confirm that all the Togruta from the settlement have gone missing.
Vanished? That's impossible. Those are my people.
With this stolen ship, they could make it to the slaver homeworld of Zygeria. Donning their traditional garb, Rex and Kenobi would explore the city, while Skywalker would act as Ahsoka's slave master in order to help them gain access to the royal court. In the presence of the Queen, we see that Ahsoka is not accustomed to being subservient to others. Notice the pat from Anakin, as his Padawan doesn't consider herself to be one of the lower beings, bowing before Her Majesty. And when the Queen comes closer to inspect her, Ahsoka snaps at her.
Don't you dare touch me.
But the Queen is impressed with Anakin's made-up backstory and persona, and takes a romantic interest in him. Meanwhile, by the open-air holding cells, Kenobi and Rex spot a single Togruta. Terrified by his Zygerian armor at first, he's too weak to speak. They try to get him out by commandeering one of the flying lizards, known as Breezax, but are shot off its back. Rex was able to hold on to the reins and make it away, but would eventually be caught as well. At the palace, Ahsoka witnesses one of the slaves driven mad and leaping to her death. This was a side of the universe that was new to her, giving her a glimpse into the source of her master's anger. Later that day, an auction was held, with some samples being brought before the crowd. The auctioneer bragging that they had captured 50,000 Togruta from the pacifist settlement, that these people refused to even commit an act of violence, and thus their future owner would have no fears of slave revolt. And then their Jedi prisoner was brought out. The Queen states that the Jedi are so ignorant they do not see the bonds they wear.
For they have forsaken their ideals to serve a corrupt Senate. Every Jedi has become a slave to the Republic.
Anakin was tasked with whipping this prisoner in front of the crowd, but the Jedi decided to put on their own show, attacking the slavers. R2 shoots out a blade to Ahsoka, and she's able to take out the guards and capture the Queen. But these slavers, like bounty hunters, always have some tricky tech up their sleeves. The Queen's throne controlled the shock collar on Ahsoka, and with a massive jolt, she's knocked unconscious, to be taken to a cage that hangs off the side of the ziggurat-like palace. Shockingly, the Queen is still attracted to Anakin. In order to keep him by her side, she used the threat of execution of Rex and Kenobi, who had been sent to the slave work camp on Kadavo. The Queen's visions of enchanting Anakin and reinstating the slave empire are brought to an abrupt halt when Count Dooku arrives. He understands that this opportunity cannot be wasted. With Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka captured, they should be immediately executed. The Queen tried to get him behind the vision of reducing the Jedi Order to slaves, but Dooku insists that they must be killed. As they debate, Skywalker had snuck out to free Ahsoka. She would rush to their stolen ship, while Anakin is summoned to the throne room. Enamored by Anakin, and outraged that Dooku would command her in her own palace, the Queen refused to execute this Jedi, and the Count is forced to make her understand her place in the CIS.
Punishment for a slave who disobeys her master.
Fighting with only a light whip, Skywalker is able to keep Dooku off and position himself to grab the Queen. But betrayed and mortally wounded, she reveals to Anakin where his friends were being held. Inside of the facility, we see that Dooku has ordered the Keeper to execute Kenobi and Rex. And with reports that an unexpected ship has arrived, he knows it must be Skywalker. The enormous turbo laser emplacements reduce the ship to slag, but the Jedi are already working their way inside the camp. Obi-Wan informs him that they cannot win this fight alone, and that the slavers will kill the Togruta if he does not surrender. Seconds later, a Venator erupts out of hyperspace, with Plo Koon and the Wolfpack rushing in on Z-95 headhunters and LA-AT gunships. Perimeter defenses were picked apart, while guards inside scramble to lock everything down. Keeper Argus opening the floor in the containment cell and electrifying the walls. While Kenobi fought for control of the camp systems, Ahsoka would rush to the Togruta. Her creative solution was to have the Arquitans pull up just under the open cell, and with jetpack troopers and grapple lines, they would be able to safely evac the Togruta.
Ahsoka, you have done a great deed for your people today.
The first ever negotiations between the Republic and Separatists are being held on the neutral world of Mandalore. The assembly is held in the throne room of Duchess Satine, but Ahsoka notices one member that catches her attention.
You didn't mention that Lux Bonteri would be here.
The room is hushed as he is the first speaker, with all expecting him to make a case for the secessionists. What the boy does reveal shocks everyone.
It has come to my attention that my mother was murdered by Count Dooku in cold blood.
The Separatist members usher him away, and Padme and Ahsoka know that this public declaration against the Count is a death sentence.
We can't just let them take him. He'll be killed.
Ahsoka follows the guards out to a Separatist ship, where she overhears the Count confessing to Mina's murder, before giving the order to execute Lux. Just after the message ends, Ahsoka rushes into the room and blasts the droids. When they pull away, she contacts Anakin and says they will be coming to Coruscant.
You'll be safe now with the Republic.
Lux plays along, but when the conversation is over, he whips out a blaster, telling Ahsoka that he has a plan. He will not be joining the Republic either. Instead, he will be meeting with allies that he made on Karnak, others who seek the death of Count Dooku. Though she stripped the gun away, he had a backup stunner, incapacitating her for a while. She would regain consciousness on-world and realize she no longer had her lightsabers. When she rushes out to confront him, she meets his new friends.
Death Watch.
They lie that they're betrothed, and when Bo-Katan starts inspecting her, R2 reveals he had the sabers. But for now, the fighting would wait. Arriving at the camp, R2's horrified, seeing how these Mandalorians had fun with their droid prisoners, shooting them just to watch their reactions. They're escorted into a tent, where Pre Vizsla shows Lux the scar on his face that Dooku gave him, and says that he can trust that their interests are aligned. With the exchange of information on the Count, the Mandalorians and Bonteri spend the night celebrating, while Ahsoka's thrown in with a tent of captives, and they're all ordered to prepare meals for the warriors.
Careful not to choke on your stupidity.
The local chief barges in to demand the release of their women, to which Vizsla surprisingly agrees. The following morning, the exchange was made, but it was too good to be true. As the chief's daughter was back in his arms, the darksaber is ignited and takes her life. Jetpacks engaged, the Mandos fly to the rooftops and unleash their flamethrowers upon the entire village. People burn up inside their homes, while Ahsoka and Lux are forced to watch. But a dying wish could not be ignored.
Save them, Ahsoka. Save them. Save my people.
This was too much. Using a pull from the debris, Ahsoka is able to spear one and take out a few more Mandos. Though 4 fiber cord whips are enough to bring the Jedi down. All this time, R2 was making friends with the other droids, repairing them, and in some cases, even getting their weapon systems operational. The astromech knew that Ahsoka was in danger, and leads his new crew to the Vizsla tent. Inside, we hear just how much Vizsla hated the Jedi. Centuries earlier, the Jedi had destroyed Mandalore, the war reducing their once lush world to the barren terrain with dome cities we see today.
For their crimes against Mandalore. So you see, it's not murder at all. It's like you say. It's justice!
But R2 is right on time, smoke screening the room and getting the sabers to Ahsoka. And she gives us one of the most amazingly smooth combat maneuvers in the entire Clone Wars, seamlessly executing 4 Death Watch Mandos while backflipping out of their restraints. The fight would spill out of the tent, where Death Watch was greeted with the droid revolt, smashing and blasting their way through the Mandos, while Vizsla engaged Ahsoka in single combat. Dual blades versus the Darksaber and wrist blaster. The fight was quick as she realized his guard was excellent, but her athleticism allowed her to flip over him and strike his jetpack, separating the two as they ran from the explosion. Lux and R2 had grabbed a speeder and were racing back to their ship, but were descended upon by Bo-Katan and 2 other Mandos. One would be taken out by a deflected bolt, while R2 would spray the other with oil, giving Ahsoka the chance to cast him away. Bo would engage her before the Padawan could reach for her blades, with the Mando martial arts being one of the best in the galaxy. But the Force was a powerful ally, launching Bo-Katan away, allowing them to reach the transport. Safely in space, they would head back to Coruscant, though R2 notes that an escape craft has been activated. Ahsoka was surprised at just how hard a goodbye this would be. They got into this mess with the Mandos because of his horrible plan, but she was the one who worried about him and came to his rescue back on Mandalore.
But we can try. Try to change things together.
Don't worry. We'll meet again.
And as he pulls off, she double takes to get another look at this boy, with whom she was developing a very complicated relationship. From here, Ahsoka would meet back up with Anakin, and after completing another mission, her master wanted to stop off at a diner, simply to get a break from the GAR rations. But moments before, Savage Press had rampaged through here in his search for his lost brother Darth Maul. The Jedi rushed to help, but the owner and police droids say that stuff like this was normal out here. Being treated to a free meal, Ahsoka notices how disturbed her master is when he gets hit with the impression of Savage and the Force.
I sense disturbance. Something sinister.
Do you know what or who it is?
At this point in the war, the CIS was gaining a greater control over the Inner Rim. One key world was Onderon, which was being ruled by a king that many saw as just a separatist puppet. Lux Bonteri was now dedicating himself to helping rebel groups that wanted to stay independent from both the CIS and Republic. But when he and Saw Gerrera contact the Jedi Order, their request for aid was shot down. Outwardly, their king was rightly in power, and they could not get involved. As the message ends, he makes sure to lock eyes with Ahsoka. Skywalker opened this up for debate, saying that they don't have to openly support them, just provide training and arms, help them take out some soft targets in the city. Yoda and Kenobi know how this is another word for terrorism, that it would likely get innocents killed. Mace was somewhat in agreement with Skywalker, but Ahsoka's troubled by this line of reasoning.
What you're suggesting would open up dangerous possibilities, and we must not train terrorists.
Rebels.
It was only after Anakin's suggestion that they bring EMP-type weapons which could only harm droids that the Council reluctantly agreed, though Kenobi had to oversee them. Navigating through the dense jungles under the cover of night, the rebels detect them, and Ahsoka makes the introduction.
I'm Commander Tano. We're here to help you take back your planet.
They bring the Jedi back to their secret camp and get to work forming this ragtag group. Ahsoka's happy to be seeing Lux again, but it's clear that he and the rebel leader Steela have something going on as well.
Good to see you again. Well, what matters now is we need each other's help, just like we did on Karlak.
Karlak? What happened on Karlak?
The rebels have a separatist armored assault tank in their possession. It's unclear if it's still functional, but it at least works as a great way to practice learning how to best scale this vehicle and attack the right sections. And Rex would help teach them how to get the droid poppers past the energy shield of the droideka. Saw Gerrera thought Lux was just a wimpy politician, not a warrior. But when Ahsoka threw him an EMP grenade, he doesn't let her down.
Nice touch.
But when Steela's having trouble as well, Ahsoka's forced to watch as Bonteri gets close with her and shows her the right moves. And to further complicate this love square, Saw Gerrera takes a liking to the Togruta, asking for his own personal lessons. The rebels were picking things up quickly, but the King's spies were always watching. Confirming the location of this hidden rebel base, droid units are mobilized. During sniper practice, Steela spots the droid wave descending upon them. With some accurate shooting, and Lux and Saw employing Ahsoka's anti-tank tactic, they're able to win the day. But now the base was spotted. They would need to take the fight to the city. And Lux comes up with the idea of smuggling their arms and forces past the ray shield by acting like they're far-off merchants. The droids allow the rebels in, and when Lux departs, we see how Ahsoka and Steela are both worried about him.
Good luck.
You too.
Over the following days, we see how the Jedi are concealed in their robes and watching over the rebels as they take out numerous droid patrols across the city. While up in the palace, King Rash is trying to think of a way to crush this insurgency, calling the previous king out from his prison cell to demand that he call off these attacks. But the old man swears he has nothing to do with this uprising, that the people were responding to the separatists' ever-increasing military presence. Enraged, the king sends his predecessor back to his cell. In the rebels' hideout in the capital, they discuss the plan to hit a larger target, something that would show the separatists were not as powerful as they appear. With the plan to hit the droid's power supply, Kenobi says the Jedi advisors had served their purpose, that they would leave but will continue to supply credits and weaponry, as well as leaving Ahsoka to stay on as an advisor for a bit longer.
Are you up for it, Snips? Or would you like to return to Coruscant?
No, Master. I want to stay.
After scouting the power facility, they agree that they will need some serious firepower to blow their way in. Later that night, an ambush is set up in the streets to lure in a solution, resulting in one of the largest firefights of this conflict, with B-1s, B-2s, droidekas, and eventually an AAT showing up to try to stop these rebels. But with that Republic training and a bit of their own improvising, they're able to secure their big gun. Steela would jump in to get it all working again, and turn it over to Saw, who would pilot it, while she and Ahsoka move into a sniping position. The droid numbers were greater than anticipated, forcing the Jedi to activate her blades and deflect some incoming bolts. If spotted, this could be a bad look for the Republic. It would be used as proof that the Republic was not allowing worlds to make their own choices in the Clone Wars, but meddling in their internal affairs to topple legal CIS supporting governments. Saw would be able to blast the doors down and then fire on the main reactor, causing an enormous discharge of electrical energy that would be seen across the entire city. In the palace, King Rash is actually inspired by this loss, that this move signed the rebels' death warrant. But tonight, the rebellion would celebrate, as the streets were cleared of droid patrols to the soundtrack of cheering civilians.
Come here, you handsome senator.
Ahsoka's finding it hard to stand this open romance between Steela and Lux, and they make the call back to the Jedi to report their victory. While Kenobi's speaking to the rebels, Anakin talks to Ahsoka on the side, knowing exactly what was going on with her. That she had feelings for the boy, and despite this being against the Jedi Code, her master did not reprimand her at all. To her surprise, he says he knows how hard it is to ignore these feelings.
I understand.
You do?
I do. But try to remember, always put purpose ahead of your feelings.
During the celebration, they would elect Steela as the group's leader. Saul was upset, and only at this moment did Ahsoka learn these two were siblings. While King Rash was calling on Dooku to send more support, the following days would see an escalation in force by both parties, larger number of droids, and more bold strikes by the rebels. A debate breaks out in the palace over the loyalties of the Onderon military and holdovers from the previous king. The tactical droid General Kalani calls out General Tandon, who swears that these rebels are in no way aided by the military or anyone else as far as they can tell. But Rash still believed the old king was behind this somehow, and orders a public execution. When the rebels hear the news, Saul defies his superior's orders. Lux and Ahsoka try to reason with him, but he heads out to try to free King Dendup.
I sense fear in you, Ahsoka.
The rebels are divided. If they try to rescue the king now, I'm afraid we might lose them.
Saul would be able to make it to the old king, but a one-way shield trapped him. And when she hears the news that the execution was scheduled with a +1, Steela says their rescue must still focus on Dendup.
We don't have time or the bodies to do both.
Purpose must come before feelings.
Words that hit Lux particularly hard. A crowd would gather to watch the execution, and Steela's plan goes off perfectly, sniping the IG-100 executioners, Lux deploying the smoke grenades, and the rebels rescuing both Saw and the king. But B-2 droid allies under the command of Kalani are able to encircle them, forcing the rebels to drop their blasters, and the execution now continues. In one afternoon, the entire leadership of the rebellion would be wiped out. The crowd starts to turn against King Rash, but they were too scared to act. Ahsoka was rushing towards the platform, about to defy her orders from the council, and openly attack the droids and CIS-aligned king. But just then General Tandon rushes in, with loyal guards to arrest the new king for the treason against Onderon. Grabbing King Rash and using him as a living shield, Tandon's able to prevent the droids from shooting in the direction of the fleeing rebels. But now the general would have to face the rest of the droids. Things look bleak, but Ahsoka reasoned that the general's defection and the civilians siding against Rash all allowed her to intervene. Now clear that the Jedi were not usurping a legitimate government, but helping to fight off a CIS puppet. The droids were easily destroyed, and she tells the general to come with her, while the mob rushes the king and his bodyguards. Back in the hideout, Ahsoka and Lux get some time alone.
I knew you couldn't resist a good fight.
Am I becoming that predictable?
Only to me.
Later she would speak with her master, who says that despite the general's defection, he still isn't sure if the council will provide official aid. The following day, the rebels are ecstatic to see their movement was spreading throughout the city, causing Saul to recommend that they turn this into a firefight in the capital to completely drive off the droids. But Ahsoka and everyone else disagrees, citing that this would endanger the civilians, that they should instead attack the droids in the outskirts to draw them into the mountains. The rightful king puts Steela in charge, and as they depart, she gives Lux Bonteri a kiss, while Ahsoka's forced to watch on and act like she's happy for him. In the palace, Kalani summons HMP droid gunships, a new droid gunship that he promises will end this insurgency once and for all. The droid units were easily taken out, but once these gunships showed up, they turned the tide of the battle, raining down death with their laser cannons and missiles, while also being unstoppable with their ray shields.
Any ideas?
Yeah, run!
Commando droids would swoop in and quickly eliminate squads of rebels, while Ahsoka ducks behind cover to make contact with her master.
It's a full-scale war! They need our help!
Anakin is furious that Kenobi would just allow these rebels to die. Ahsoka already revealed that the Jedi was helping. It made no sense for the Council to turn their backs. Obi-Wan argues that this is a galactic war, that this happens sometimes. But Skywalker knows a way that they can help take down this new droid gunship without it looking like it came from the Republic. Anakin heads to Florum to purchase rocket launchers from the Pirate King Hondo Ohnaka. He would deliver them to the rebels, and as soon as they were in their possession, Saul rushes out and shoots down an HMP. Newly inspired, the rebels fall back to the caverns, drawing the rest of the droid forces into a trap. More gunships would be destroyed, and Steela was able to save the king's life from the pursuing commando droids. Saul would fire on the final gunship, landing a hit that would send it spiraling out of control. But, as the Force would have it, the craft flew right at the cliff where Steela and the king were standing. As the rock face starts to collapse, she pushes the king to safety, leaving her dangling over the edge. Lux rushes to help, but he loses his footing and starts to fall. Ahsoka is able to call on the Force to get him to safety, and then turns to save Steela. Hovering in the air, Ahsoka can almost touch her fingers when the HMP flickers to life, detects a target, and fires, the bolt striking Ahsoka and breaking her connection. Lux destroys the droid as quickly as possible, but as Ahsoka turns to the cliff, she sees it's too late. Saw and Bonteri look on as the woman they loved, the inspiring leader of these rebel forces, lay dead on the ground below. In the palace, Kalani tells Dooku about the loss of so many of these elite gunships, an indication that the rebels had grown too powerful. This world was not worth further CIS investments, so Dooku gave the order to have King Rash executed. With a single bolt fired by Kalani and the order for a full retreat, the rebels were left to take the capital back. A recoronation of the Rightful King was held, and an enormous funeral for Stila Guerrera, who was both the moral leader and the battlefield general of those rebel forces. Her people knew that their freedom was because of her, something Saw and Bonteri took solace in. Skywalker and Kenobi would also be in attendance, and know how difficult this mission was for Ahsoka, testing her abilities to deny her own romantic feelings, lead a war from the shadows, and show great discretion and self-control in this politically complicated world.
This has been quite a journey for our Padawan.
And she not only helped Stila and the rebel movement, but her actions have convinced Bonteri as well.
But after watching your heroics and the selflessness of the Jedi, I do believe the Republic is the right side to be on.
Her next mission was intended to give Ahsoka some well-earned time away from the battlefront, but it would also find new ways to challenge the Padawan.
Time of the Gathering. For a Jedi, there is no greater challenge or honor. The time has come for you to build your own lightsabers.
They would head to the ancient Jedi world of Ilum, the icy homeworld of the Kyber crystals, which were at the core of the Jedi weapon. The first trial would be to focus on the Force and reveal the opening to the ancient temple. Inside, Yoda would tell about the trial and cause a beam of light to melt away the ice blocking the door. Each of the younglings would be tested in ways that were very specific to their unique shortcomings, being fearful, doubtful, impatient, and cocky. But like countless Jedi before them, they received their crystals and couldn't wait to start building their lightsabers. On the Crucible, a ship that dates back to the time of the Old Republic, they meet Professor Huyang, the droid that has guided younglings through this process for over a millennia. They're all excited to get to building, but the professor points out that this is a process that will test their patience and precision in the Force. The droid would walk them through the technical side, while Ahsoka tried to help them get into the right mindset.
Quiet your mind and concentrate. The design will become clear.
Though a sacred rite of passage in the life of all Jedi, to pirates like Hondo and Akka, all they saw was the credits that were to be made, stating that just a single Kyber crystal could make a man incredibly rich. Their unique disc frigate swoops in, firing a barrage of rockets, then enormous grapple hooks, bringing the Crucible in close as pirates perform a spacewalk to guide boarding tubes. The Jedi hide from the boarding party, and Ahsoka makes a plan, telling them to hide in the vault while she works to clear the ship. But they were quickly intercepted, forcing them to think on their feet, using an improperly assembled lightsaber as a bomb, and setting all the training droids on the highest power setting. Still, the pirates' numbers were too great. Luckily, Ahsoka would return from repairing the engines to save the day, taking out several pirates. But when it came to Hondo, she didn't want to kill the man that had helped save the rebels on Onderon, and who was growing to become an overall unlikely Jedi asset.
I don't want to hurt you, Hondo!
I know, and I appreciate that.
Still, he and his friends had to go. With the younglings in the cockpit, she orders them to engage the engines, ripping them from the pirate boarding tube, and creating a vacuum that was sucking them into space. Ahsoka was able to send them all back to their flagship, but just as she was about to close the doors, a pirate crashes into her, and the pair go tumbling toward the entire pirate army. Ahsoka had given the command to jump to hyperspace, but was now captive in the Corona class. The younglings contact the nearest Republic forces, which happen to be Kenobi and the 212th. He instructs them to stay put and that Cody was on the way, that despite the fact that the pirate base on Florum was near their location, they could not risk their lives on a rescue mission. But a CIS fleet emerges from hyperspace and engages Kenobi's forces. The younglings' rescue is delayed, giving them enough time to finish constructing their lightsabers, and they quickly grow restless, knowing they can use their new weapons to save Ahsoka.
It would be wise if you would let me go.
No, it would be unprofitable.
Hondo was already envisioning all the credits he could receive with this catch, while Kenobi was suffering an incredible defeat. Droid fighters, bombers, and gunships were ripping the Republic forces apart, culminating in Grievous dueling the Master in the hangar of Kenobi's flagship, the Negotiator. This battle would force Obi-Wan to set his flagship to self-destruct.
I'm afraid the younglings are now on their own.
Meanwhile, on-world, the younglings discover a traveling circus that was to entertain the pirate horde. Using their Jedi acrobatics to pass as performers, they're able to join the show. After the opening act, the younglings spot Ahsoka's blades on Hondo's belt. With some sleight of hand, the blades are removed, while the rest use the seesaw to send the Pirate King flying. The gig was up, and with the freed Ahsoka, they used the circus vehicle to race back to the Crucible.
I could pretend to be angry, but you were all very brave. I've learned from my master that sometimes doing the right thing means bending the rules.
With the pirates in hot pursuit, the cruiser was able to position itself over them, while Ahsoka was deflecting the bolts with their dual sabers. But the incoming fire was too great and the terrain too perilous, forcing the transport and the cruiser to pull away. They're nearly able to make it aboard, before a bolt right to the engine sends the crew tumbling out. Her lightsabers separated from her, Ahsoka, the younglings, and even the droid professor are captured. The pirates are happy with their catch, but cannot believe their eyes when they return to base. A full planetary invasion was underway, with CIS droid ships, tanks, troop transports, and even Grievous. The general storms into the throne room of the Pirate King, roughing up the Weequay, before introducing the scum to his new master. We learn that Dooku provided the information that led to the younglings' capture, but Hondo wished to sell Ahsoka to the highest bidder and not contact Dooku directly. The Count decided to end this man's whole career, scrapping and destroying all of the pirates' arms, ammunition, and vehicles, while Ahsoka was trying to bargain with her captors, saying that they could sneak back and free Hondo, allowing them to escape via a secret stash of ships.
Then we'll have to rescue him. I know Grievous, and I know droids. With my help, you stand a better chance.
Once they made it inside, Hondo quickly flips back to being a friend of the Jedi, and their combined forces are able to push through the droid ranks. The younglings get their first droid kills, and make off with speeder bikes and a light tank. Hondo would make it to his concealed hangar, and depart via the Slave One, while the rest of the Jedi are pursued by Grievous. Ahsoka held the cyborg off long enough for them to make a run for it. Still unable to best him, she has to settle for a successful escape on the vessel that Ahsoka once thought she had destroyed. They're able to make their way to Kenobi in his new fleet, where Hondo avoids the whole kidnapping part of the story, focusing more on the rescue from Grievous. Obi-Wan knows this wild card is better left in the deck, just in case they ever need help from him in the future. And Ahsoka's able to congratulate the Padawans on what had become a very unconventional trip to Ilum.
We had quite an eventful mission.
The most eventful since the time Master Yoda went to find his lightsaber crystal.
As if to show just how much Ahsoka had grown over these years, she would go from guiding younglings to saving her master's life with some expert piloting of her own.
Look out! Incoming missiles!
The Separatists were launching an invasion of the planet Cato Neimoidia. Tri-droid fighters would launch a Discord missile to explode in front of their Eta 2s, releasing a cloud of buzz droids. Anakin tried to play it cool and was able to seemingly clear all of them, but a small explosion knocked him unconscious. Ahsoka has R2 tip the wing to see if there were any more on the ventral side, and there was a complete infestation. She knew that there was no way to save the ship and has to trust her astromech R7 to communicate with R2, having them land the ships while she leaps over to free her master.
R7, take over the ship. I'm going after Anakin.
Somebody has to save his skin.
Her knowledge of these fighters, faith in the droids, and her athleticism allow her to get Anakin safely to the ridge.
Where's my fighter? How did I get here?
Fighter crashed. I saved the day. You're welcome.
Now conscious, her master was eager to get back into the fight, but they get a call from Yoda, saying that the Jedi Temple had been bombed, that they must return to Coruscant immediately. As they get their mission briefing, we see that Ahsoka is in utter disbelief that a Jedi could do this.
I can't believe a Jedi would attack a place this sacred.
But as they make it to the hangar that was bombed, Anakin tells Ahsoka that the idea was not unbelievable. It isn't even unheard of. Both Dooku and Krell were just the most recent of Jedi defectors.
Not every Jedi agrees with this war, Ahsoka. There are many political idealists among us.
When she and the detective droid make their rounds in the medical wing, asking all the survivors what they saw, one Pantoran has a clue, saying that a maintenance man in the hangar named Jakar Bomani was the last one in the area before the explosion. Anakin's confused how anyone could sneak in an explosive, and goes to speak with temple security. He sees that there's a large group forming on the steps, protesting what they saw as the Jedi dragging the Republic into war, with the Clone Wars being fought with Jedi generals against a fallen Jedi Master. When he's showing the security head the holo of the suspect, Jakar's wife steps forward from the crowd, saying that she's not heard from him and feared he died in the blast. In the interrogation room, she's furious that Anakin would even suspect her husband of bombing the Jedi Temple, a man who loved the Jedi Order and who passed all of the Jedi's rigorous tests just to be allowed to work there. Back in the hangar, Ahsoka's searching through the three-dimensional hologram recording of this area. Her and the detective are trying to find the source, but finding no residue from an explosive device. At last, the detective finds microscopic droids that cover some of the material that was blown away from the epicenter. By scanning the remains of all the victims, they find these same nanodroids concentrated in the bloodstream of only one sample.
Because he was the bomb.
Jedi rush off to Jakar's home, scanning for any trace of these incredibly rare devices. Ahsoka finds evidence in the food, but the wife has no trace within her. Anakin thinks he's solved this mystery, and as they head back to the temple to detain his wife, Letta makes a break for it, being surprisingly athletic herself, coasting through the alleyways on various speeders. But there was no way she was escaping Ahsoka, the Padawan pouncing on her prey and laying into the traitor. Though we should know what Ahsoka was most outraged by.
People blamed Jedi because of you. People were killed because of you.
The first thing that comes to mind is how this woman is willing to tarnish the name of the Jedi, to shake everyone's faith in the Order. Her concern for the lives lost came second. But this root of Ahsoka's concern was mirrored just a few minutes later, with the plot revealed and Letta behind bars. The Padawan confides in her master that if it was what the Council had suspected, that a Jedi orchestrated this bombing, it would shake her whole view of the Order.
I don't know how I would have felt if a Jedi was really behind this.
There are going to be Jedi who disappoint us, Ahsoka.
She is stunned by this, pausing to take this all in before catching up with her master. Yoda would conduct a eulogy for those lost during the attack, with the most notable figures in the Order, Grand Army of the Republic, and Senate all in attendance. After the ceremony, Anakin, Tarkin, Ahsoka, and Barriss are walking together, discussing what was being done with Letta. We see the old rivalry between Tarkin and Ahsoka bubbling up, livid that he's so arrogantly taking over command of this investigation. What was even more frustrating was that Anakin sided with this military man, saying that since clones were killed and Letta's a Republic citizen, not a Jedi, the military court should deal with her. Barriss dismisses herself, and Anakin sees that his Padawan wants to comfort her old friend.
Be with your friend, Ahsoka. In ways she is still very young.
Indeed.
Barriss is troubled by this whole incident, seeing that in times like this, the Jedi Code seems to fall short.
Have you ever wondered if it was right to ignore your emotions?
Our struggle as Jedi is to move past them.
You've always been capable of seeing things clearly.
I guess I fooled you like I have everyone else.
Barriss is still shaken, and we see that Ahsoka knows she is not always able to deny her natural reactions to things, that they will continue to refine this self-denial over a lifetime as Jedi Knights. Ahsoka rushes to the meeting room to hear the next mission briefing, but Tarkin interrupts, stating that Letta will only speak with Ahsoka Tano. Everyone is confused, but she's eager to assist in the investigation. Arriving at the Naval Intelligence Headquarters, she passes layer after layer of clone security. Commander Fox congratulates her on the capture, but once they escort the Jedi to the prison cell, he overhears a very odd statement by Letta.
I was told if I ever needed help, you were the Jedi to contact.
Ahsoka at first thinks this woman is lying, trying to pass off the blame to some mysterious Jedi that gave her the nanobots. But Letta sees that she was used, and when she finally starts to tell Ahsoka the name of this Jedi traitor, the prisoner is force-choked and lifted off her feet. Ahsoka is panicked, but there's no way to stop this, forcing her to watch as Letta was suffocated to death. Fox and the Coruscant Guard were watching the whole thing on surveillance video and rushed to the cell.
I can't say I blame you, Commander Tano, but all the same, you're under arrest.
The Padawan pleads her innocence, but is thrown behind ray shields all the same. Tarkin arrives with an infuriating air of victory and righteous superiority. He always doubted this child, and now he had irrefutable footage of her cover-up, killing the bomber before she could reveal how Ahsoka planned this attack and supplied the nanobots.
It seems the Jedi she was afraid of was you.
As soon as Anakin was informed, he tried forcing his way past the clones to free his Padawan, but seeing Commander Fox was not going to budge, he found a way to let go of his anger. When Ahsoka wakes up, she sees a keycard had conveniently been placed just outside her cell.
Master, I knew you wouldn't let me down.
Using the Force to manipulate the access panel, she was now free to try and solve the mystery on her own. But around the very first corner, she sees a room full of incapacitated clones, and then she finds her lightsabers and comm on the floor. Still utterly confused, Fox rushes in and sounds the alarm. Rex and Skywalker were informed and raced back to the base. The little one was calling on all of her training to evade the base security, flipping through the closing series of blast doors and sprinting down the halls. She now sees dead clones, all cut through with a lightsaber, and knows someone was doing everything they could to set her up. Her master and clone friend arrive just in time to hear Fox give an order to execute Tano on sight, but Rex would not allow that.
I know Commander Tano. She would never do something like this.
And Anakin desperately pleads with her to come back.
Someone's setting me up!
I believe you, Ahsoka!
But no one else will!
The chase would bring her across the entire Naval Intelligence Headquarters and out to the fuel depot. Being chased by LAAT gunships raining down volley after volley of stun bolts, she's pushed to her physical limits, able to avoid fire until the very end. Encircled by troopers and gunships, her master calls out, begging her to turn herself in. Perhaps she considered it, but ultimately could not, calling on the Force to send her in a great leap onto one of the tubes, cutting her way in and making her way into the labyrinth of sewage tunnels. The clones were scattered, but Anakin pauses to connect with her through the Force. Alone, he would make his way to her.
You didn't even try to come and help me.
They wouldn't let me in to talk to you.
You could have if you tried.
You need to come back and make your case to the Council.
Anakin, you have to trust me now.
Rex would rush toward them, along with the clone guards. Ahsoka would lock eyes with her devastated master, as she jumps down into the lower levels of Coruscant. While the little one is on her own, the Council meets to discuss the next steps. Plo Koon, the man that saved and discovered Ahsoka at the age of 3, is devastated by the situation.
I do not believe that Ahsoka could have fallen so far.
The evidence appears very clear. Tarkin and the military are searching for the fugitive, and most of the Council is convinced of her treason as well. Yoda commands Plo and Anakin to form a search team, but Mace disagrees.
Master Skywalker and Master Plo Koon, with clones, you will go.
He's emotionally tied to her. Probably too emotional to do what needs to be done.
Though Yoda certainly understands Mace's concern, this may be the ultimate test being put forward by the Force. Overcoming this fear of loss was the reason Yoda paired Anakin with Ahsoka in the first place. He knows he must let this play out and see how Skywalker holds up. Down in the lower levels, we see that the underworld police have her image posted everywhere and are scouring the streets for her. Not sure who to trust, she makes a call to Barriss. Her friend is happy to hear from her, but tells Ahsoka to lay low and avoid the Jedi comms. She would try to blend in, but this wasn't exactly her forte. And with wanted posters digitally plastered on every level, a bounty hunter had already spotted her, ambushing the Padawan and overwhelming her, igniting 2 crimson blades that came close to Ahsoka's neck. Ventress, the once apprentice to Count Dooku, who had been betrayed by her master after a single command from Sidious. An assassin that was once herself a Jedi Padawan, Ventress was now operating as a bounty hunter. It made sense to Ahsoka that only someone like Ventress could have been devious enough to think up this complex plan to frame her. But as they walked, she could sense that the fallen Sith was telling the truth. After catching her up on the bombing incident, Ventress takes great joy in seeing this feud within the Order.
So the Jedi aren't that holy after all.
And Ahsoka leveraged Ventress's want for revenge, and knows that the assassin would like to return to a relatively normal life.
I'll get you a full pardon for your crimes.
Just as she agrees, Republic forces descend on them, and they're forced to make a run for it, with Anakin pulling up in time to see a troubling sight. His Padawan allied with Ventress, denying any part of himself that could start to believe her as a traitor. Ventress would be on lookout, while Ahsoka made a call to Barriss to see if she had any information. Her friend was able to give her the location of the warehouse that contains these rare nanodroids.
3 levels up, there seems to be an abandoned warehouse where they used to build munitions that Letta visited during the time she was getting access to the nanodroids.
How did you find this out?
But just then the clone troopers swarm them. It doesn't look good, but the Padawan's able to convince Ventress not to kill him. Instead, it would be a flurry of kicks and lightsaber strikes to their DC-15s that would subdue the squads and allow for their escape. When she makes it to the warehouse, the two head their separate ways. As Ventress makes her way down the trash-strewn alleys, she's ambushed by a cloaked figure, hitting her with a 50-gallon drum and then smacking her in the head with the pipe, before taking her sabers and bounty hunter mask. The being would then rush to the warehouse and take the fight to Ahsoka.
Ventress! I see you've had a change of heart!
The battle would be intense, with the relentless barrage of red blades. The fight started taking down the whole building, eventually resulting in an explosion that could be seen across the city. The local police spot it, and the Jedi strike team pick up the radio call, flying over in their LAATLEs. Ahsoka was defeated by the hooded assailant and fell into a storage area, where the Republic forces would make their arrest.
No! Wolf, let me explain!
With the Padawan unconscious and restrained, they made their way back to the Jedi Temple. Plo has to report to the Council that little Ahsoka was found with the very same nanobots that were used in the temple bombing. Things are looking even worse, but some details also didn't make sense.
It still doesn't explain Ventress's involvement. And we saw her with Ahsoka. I think there's more going on than we know.
Back in the temple, it is Tarkin who makes the demand that Ahsoka be expelled by the Order, so that they could conduct what would be seen as a fair trial. Obi-Wan says they should all stick by her, and deny this request. But everyone else from Saesee Tiin to Windu to Yoda all agree the evidence is too strong and the risk for bias too obvious. Before they make a decision, they summon Master and Apprentice.
How plead you?
Not guilty, Master.
The question is, Padawan Tano, who is deceiving us? Ventress, you, or someone else?
I am not deceiving you!
Despite hearing her explanation, the Council has made their decision against her.
She will be expelled from the Jedi Order.
You can't do this!
And it is Coyote Mundi that reads her official expulsion from the Jedi Order.
Henceforth, you are barred from the Jedi Order.
She would be transferred over to Republic authorities, though her master and lawyer Padme would be able to visit her. Ahsoka retells the story of her run-in with Ventress, and Anakin knows that if this is the only lead, he has to try and find the assassin in the lower levels. After her master leaves, Padme tries to confront the Padawan, who over the years has become something of an adoptive child to them.
But everyone except Anakin has abandoned me.
Ventress still didn't have her lightsabers, and with Anakin full of rage, the fight was a short one. Force choking her, then actually gripping his hands around her neck. Ventress sees this was no time to play coy. She reveals everything she knows.
Your Padawan contacted the temple. She spoke to someone named Barriss.
In NIHQ, Tarkin makes his opening statements.
When you are found guilty, I ask the court that the full extent of the law be brought down upon you, including penalty of death.
Padme points out that Leto was afraid of a Jedi, and that it makes no sense for Ahsoka to kill someone by way of the Force when she knew the room was being monitored.
A Jedi may be responsible for the murder, but that Jedi is not Ahsoka Tano.
Anakin heads to the temple and into the chambers of Barriss Offee, one of Ahsoka's closest friends, the Padawan that she saved back on Geonosis, and who had grown up together in the Jedi Temple. She was the Jedi traitor. Anakin would strike at Barriss with her own saber, forcing her to call Ventress's blades into her hands. The fight would provoke Skywalker to pull from the dark side as he pursued her through the temple and bashed her defenses down with overwhelming blows, utterly destroying her will in the Force, catching her midair, choking her, and smashing her against the great tree. Back in the trial, Palpatine was about to read the verdict.
Overwhelming count of...
Chancellor, I am here with evidence and a confession.
Accepting her fate, Barriss scolds the Jedi for their involvement in the war, which she believes to have been created by a Sith Lord, forcing the Jedi to in effect be agents of evil, dragging the galaxy into darkness while claiming the moral high ground.
That the Jedi are the ones responsible for this war. That we've so lost our way that we have become villains in this conflict.
Anakin is filled with joy and relief at seeing Ahsoka freed, but though exonerated, the Padawan still seems troubled. They return to the Jedi Temple, where the Council's also incredibly happy to have her back. Her friend and Jedi savior Plo Koon opening up first.
You have our most humble apologies, little Ahsoka.
This was actually your great trial.
Back into the Order. You may come.
They're asking you back, Ahsoka. I'm asking you back.
To everyone else, this issue was now behind them. Just one great Jedi trial placed here by the Force. But to Ahsoka, this was much bigger than just this case of the temple bombing. As we saw when the investigation started, she was most shaken by the idea of the Jedi Order being tainted. Knowing that what the Order meant to her, how she conceived of it in her mind, was not how it was in reality. Certainly not how the Separatists saw them, and even disdained by many citizens and military officials within the Republic. This made real for Ahsoka the idea that even Jedi could come to hate the Order, seeing the Jedi as not just flawed, but as making the galaxy worse. Her idealized view of the Order was shattered when the Council abandoned her so quickly, to their own admission, a decision that was influenced by politics, not wanting to look biased in a time of war. For all of these reasons, Ahsoka knew this was just the beginning of a new trial. Perhaps it was one placed on her by the Force itself, a trial that would lead her to eventually transcend the Jedi Order. But right now, she would have to do something that would shatter her master's soul.
I'm sorry, Master, but I'm not coming back.
Skywalker has to speak with her further, but notice that Plo Koon holds Kenobi back from running after him, and Yoda shakes his head in despair, knowing that this attempt to help Anakin overcome his fear of loss had backfired. The Council's wisdom did not make a Padawan that would come to respect the Jedi Order's chain of command. They pushed her away from the Order completely. Skywalker would not learn to let go of his fears and trust the Order. He would never forgive them for turning their back on his Padawan. Her goodbye shows just how close these two had become. So many unspoken understandings. Earlier we saw that she was aware of the secret love between him and Padme, and she even knew of his deeply concealed thoughts of leaving the Order himself.
more than you realize, I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
I know.
There was nothing more to say. A tear falls down her cheek as she walks away from the only life she ever knew. I think this is a good place to pause. In this episode, we started with her revival on Mortis, Anakin channeling the Force itself to save her, and ended with Ahsoka losing her life as a Jedi, Anakin unable to stop this. In the next episode, we'll cover her role in the final moments of the Clone Wars, see how she survived on after Order 66, eventually helping give rise to the Rebel Alliance, all while never losing hope that Anakin Skywalker could be saved. If you want to see that, be sure to subscribe, like the video if you liked it, and leave a comment. If you want to connect with us on social media, find ways to help support the channel for free, get Star Wars audiobooks and merch, or check out our Patreon or PayPal, be sure to check out the links in the description below. Special shout out to Chris Garcia, Andrew Ban, Seraph Diaz, and Cas Costello. But most important of all, remember, the Order had it coming, and the Force will be with you, always.